morning, dear panelists, dear change makers, the builders and the shapers of future India and the future corporate India. It's my privilege to be here, to be as part of this People Conclave organized by Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industries. I have come from Bangalore to be part of this event here. And Bengaluru always has a small Bengal in it. It's Bengaluru, so that's how it becomes Bengaluru. And I was a bit surprised when I was introduced as Surya Prakash Mohapatra. I thought I'll be introduced as Surya Prakash Mohapatra. But we have moved on. So as I have moved on from Surya, which how I am called, and Surjo sometimes, and now it's Surya, then I never realized when the Surya Prakash Mohapatra becomes Surya Prakash Mohapatra. So that's the transition. So that's the whole world is changing. So ladies and gentlemen, it's important for us to know what's changing. Before we talk about technology and how it is impacting the HR landscape and the L&D landscape, it's important for us to understand what's changing. There are quite a few things which are changing in the industry that we need to know. First and foremost, what's changing is millennials are coming into the workforce in large numbers. Very soon, 3 out of 4 employees at the workplace are going to be millennials. 75% of them. So since I'm an L&D professional, and today I'm going to talk about how technology is going to impact the L&D landscape, it's important to understand that millennials have different tastes, different preferences. Their learning styles, learning preferences are different. So how, as L&D professionals, we are preparing ourselves for that change. There's another interesting change that's happening. We are going to see a composition of full-time employees, part-time employees, contract employees, and employees working for multiple employers at the same time. That's an interesting one. So the concept of employer loyalty is not going to be there because, well, an individual employee is working for multiple employers. So how are you prepared as HR and L&D practitioners for a scenario like that? The concept of 9 to 5, 9 to 6 working hours has already disappeared. So how do you prepare for that change? People are always on the go. They are working at the airport, waiting for the flight. They're even working at the doctor's clinic, where waiting for that turn to be seen by the doctor. They're working at the coffee shop. They're working almost everywhere. So people are working on the go, anytime, any place, any pace. So that's an interesting one. So how can we prepare as L&D practitioners? How can we really prepare learning solutions? How can we really enable these people? How can we really develop these people who are everywhere and nowhere and somewhere? Are we ready for that? There's a couple of other interesting things which are happening. So the baby boomers stayed for about 7 years in an organization. Gen X stayed for about 5 years on an average. Gen Y and the millennials are going to stay for about 2 years in an organization on an average. So how do we train them? What do we do for them? How do we keep them engaged? There is another interesting challenge that we are going to see, or we have already started seeing. We have started seeing that a lot of people in their mid-40s, they're having a mid-career crisis. Many of them are all of a sudden becoming jobless because the skills are not relevant anymore. They bring in good amount of experience, but the skill set all of a sudden becomes obsolete, not relevant anymore. So these are few things which are happening in the industry. These are the workforce trends that we are seeing today. So as HR and L&D practitioners, we need to prepare a strategy around these trends. That's important. As you have changed and moved on and you no longer call me Surjo and you call me Surya, similarly, we'll also have to adapt ourselves to the change. And how do you really change? What change we bring about? The most important thing at the workplace, since people are always on the go, if you ask them to come for a 3-day training program, they're not going to come. The managers are not going to release them. The supervisors will not let them come to training programs. They themselves will not be interested in coming to training programs. So now we really have to design programs which can be accessed on the go. Whether I'm sitting at the doctor's clinic, going back home on my car, or waiting for my flight at the airport, can I really quickly go through a bite-sized module on my mobile phone? Are we ready for that? Many organizations have made great strides, but many others are really struggling with that. Can we really provide employee performance support tools on the job itself? So in the good old days, it's the subject matter expert who were there on the job and helping the employees, the new employees. Today, many of them are not there. They have gone away. You know, all of you remember the 10 years ago when you used to drive a car, and when you have reached your destination, you are driving with your spouse, your husband or your wife, and when you're about to park your car, your wife would get down or your husband will get down, depending on who is driving, and will help you park the car. So suppose a man is driving, the wife gets down and then says, now turn left, then turn right, then well, come straight now. Hey, you're going to hit the pillar now. You go back and start all over again. That's what the wife used to do. But today you don't need that. How do you park your car? How do you reverse your car? You have cameras fitted with sensors who will guide you how to get there. So ladies and gentlemen, what's the bad news in this? What's the bad news? Yeah, partly correct. Wife's role as a subject matter expert has become obsolete. What's the good news? The good news is wife is still there. So that's the good news. But wife has now more time to be on the WhatsApp and send a few messages before the husband parks the car. And it can apply to the husband as well if the wife is driving. So this is what is happening. The subject matter experts are going away, and some of the roles are becoming obsolete. So as HR and learning practitioners, we have to really design a learning strategy where people will go to work, they will stop for 10 minutes, go through a learning module, go back to work for 3 hours, stop working, go through a half an hour module, go back to work. So the practice that we followed in good old days where people used to stop work, go through a training program for 2 days, then start work. That's not going to happen anymore. So work, stop work, keep working, stop for a while, and then continue working. That's how the future is going to be. Another interesting development that we're going to see is immersive learning and adaptive learning. So we talked about diversity in the previous panel. Our abilities, our learning abilities, our experiences are also diverse in the organization. So how as learning practitioners, we prepare a strategy which adapts to the learning styles and adapts to the proficiency levels of people in the organization. So with the invention of artificial intelligence, which is transforming the learning space today, adaptive learning is possible. So if 20 people get into a curriculum and they start learning at the same time, the curriculum has been designed in such a manner, depending on how each individual is progressing, the curriculum will adapt itself. So if I'm moving fast, it will throw more modules at me. And if I'm going slow, it will get me to revise some of the modules again and again. So that's how the learning landscape is going to change drastically. Another important development that we will see in the learning space is the re-emergence of communities of practice. Communities of practice used to be a great habit, a great practice in industries, in factories. But today, all kinds of organizations will adopt that because domain knowledge is going to become extremely important and critical. And for people to build their domain knowledge quickly, people belonging to a particular practice need to be brought together. Believe it or not, people in organizations want to interact with each other and learn from each other. As HR and L&D leaders, all we need to do is facilitate that. We need to facilitate interactions. We should not become a stumbling block. We should bring people together, bring people and people together, and then let people know where the experts are available, who can they reach out for interaction, bring people together for interaction. So sharing and seeking knowledge can become intrinsic to people in an organization. That's another interesting development that we'll see in the learning and development space. While we are talking about all of this transformation that can be brought about by technology, which can really disrupt and transform learning and development, but there are some fundamental principles that would always stand true. They will always hold good. They will never change. And the most important principle is technology is only an accelerator of momentum. It is not the creator of momentum. If we believe that technology on its own will create momentum, that's not possible. It can only accelerate. It's people who can actually create momentum. It's people who can drive that. It's our purpose which will drive the technology. It's not the other way around. Many cases we start with the tool and say, let's adopt this tool. But that's not the wisest way to kind of approach a problem. We have to look at what we're trying to do and then choose the right technology instead of doing it the other way around. And it's not technology that can really drive action. It's the energy and the passion that people bring in that drives action. And no matter everything that we do, the guru or the teacher, the trainer will always remain, will never go away. So with this note, I would like to conclude here with my opening remarks, and then we'll get back to more discussions. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mahapatra, for giving such a great insight on the learning and development aspects. Also, you spoke about the technology disruption and the transformation that is happening in this space. I think Wipro being a trendsetter in the learning and development and technology, leveraging the technology and learning and development, I'm sure